you.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Today is, of course, June 1st, 2026. By the grace of Allah, we're all here and present and accounted for. And we thank you for joining MAP5, Muslim American Power 5, designed to inspire, educate, and empower you to get more involved in your community through civic engagement. We want to start the program off like we always do traditionally, with supplications to Almighty God, and that's in the form of the first surah of the Holy Quran that's entitled Al-Fatiha, or the opening. So if you would join me in your own special way, prayer position, we would appreciate it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. The translation from the translation of Yusuf Ali. With the name of Almighty God, most gracious, most merciful. All praise is due to God, most gracious, most merciful, master of all the systems of knowledge. Either we worship and thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way. Will those upon whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, those whose portion is not wrath, or those who go astray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, again, I'm blessed with two outstanding hosts, our sister Amatullah Alaji-Sabrie and the Honorable Cheryl Sudduth. And this day, inshallah, we're going to discuss civic engagement and community development. We've invited 5 guests, and we hope that at least one of them shows up. We, we think
20% is not bad.
20%, 20%. Like, like we always do, we always like to have an icebreaker to get things started. Um, I want to briefly share an incident I was involved in yesterday, community event. Then we're going to turn it over to Sister Cheryl Sudduth, our icebreaker champion there. Even though she lives on the West Coast, we can forgive her. But yesterday we had an event entitled uh, "Lift Every Vote," and it was an interfaith effort with elected officials and some community leaders. Elected officials, 4 of them, and then we had about 3 faith leaders. And I moderated the first half, and they designated me as chairman of this Lift Every Vote effort. It's a relatively new corporation, but we were able to find some funding for it as a nonpartisan entity, about $50,000. And so we're going after 6,000 people who, for some reason, decided not to vote on the last round. And we're trying to engage them in the community with discussions, with food, etc., to make sure they go vote this time. Because 6,000 will make a difference in the outcome of the elections in Forsyth County. But nonetheless, the emphasis was that we had a church full of people. I was absolutely shocked because we've only been doing this for maybe 2 weeks in terms of structuring a board to operate, raise funds, put out a pretty decent website, and get the word out to different groups. And we made several, maybe 7 presentations around the city, letting people know what we were trying to do. And the old heads, pardon my vernacular, but why do we need another organization? Don't we have enough organizations already? I said, we'll singly focus on one mission. Please join us as community builders to help us accomplish this. And we need many community builders. And that sort of solved that riffraff for a minute there. We're going forward. We need a strategy. And I told them in the end, I said, listen, don't let other people define you. And this was a church full of all kind of folk. I call them the Abrahamic umbrella. I said, be very, very careful how what you respond to. Let me suggest something to you for this whole DEI phenomenon that's shaking the roots of some people's organizations. DEI only stands for divinely established internally, and that comes from Almighty God. So don't let other people define you. Uh, the occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania will not be there forever. So lose hope. Just come with your strategy. Organize, strategize, implement, and then evaluate what you're doing. But don't ever give up faith in what you can accomplish. Period. Now, that's my soap opera for today. We turn it over now to our Honorable Cheryl Sudduth, our distinguished sister from the west coast of the country. Are you on mute, Cheryl?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think she's getting into character.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, I forgot. Countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Action. Thank you, Cheryl.
Monday morning.
Good Monday morning.
Yes,
God,
Salam alaikum.
Morning. God. Yes, sir. Yes. Tomorrow can't come fast enough.
Hmm.
Here on the West Coast, it is our primary election, and I am prayerful rather than hopeful that um, my phones will get a rest, at least temporarily, from text messages and phone calls. My email inbox will stop and I can actually get some work emails in between the fundraising calls. So thank you for that, what you just did. I do believe that it is interesting that so many people are still unaware that there are elections happening right now. How they're unaware, I'm not sure. Um, but they know that there's baseball happening, basketball playoffs,
Go
Fi-
Knicks.
FIFA World Cup, hockey,
Hmm.
Roland Garros, tennis. Yeah, all kinds of sports happening. But you don't know that there's an election that you may or may not be able to vote in. That there's taxes that are going to be imposed on you, whether or not you vote or not vote. You might lose access to your local parks. Gas prices may go up more. Them eggs that you're crying about, I don't even eat the eggs, but egg prices that you're crying about may increase. You used to pay $50, $75 for a bag of groceries, and now it's $145. The rent and the mortgage that you pay is skyrocketing, but you don't know there's an election. In the words of the infamous late night philosopher, Arsenio Hall,
Hmm.
the things that make you say,
Hmm.
are these the same people that show up in droves for the playoff games and for, uh, what do you call it, Black Friday, but can't find the PTA meeting?
Hmm.
Are these the same people who holler and take out a payday loan for school prom dresses and renting luxury vehicles for the middle school and high school prom and then start cussing out the teacher because the child did not graduate or was not promoted or was held back. But these same people, because it seems like a profile. And don't at me either. And if you do, it's Sudduth with two U's. Sudduth, Sudduth 7 at yahoo.com. I can go all day too. I'm just gonna warn you. There. Because if you're not gonna vote, I'll have a conversation with you all day long. So whoever is reviewing this all day long. If you don't know that there's an election happening wherever you live, yeah, I have no problem having a conversation with you. It's irresponsible. And I don't have time for irresponsible people. And in the words of Mr. John Heinrich Clark, you don't want to come at me because I only debate my equals. All others, I teach. And class is open. Madam, it's your turn. Pick a number for today.
Oh, I picked it last week, but I'm happy to. Yes, I'm gonna take privilege here, elder
Yes, ma'am.
privilege, and pick a number. Um,
Elder privilege. I love it.
I'm going to pick, let me see, I think I picked
We went to 1
uh,
to 28, and you had
15. Was it 15 last week?
15 last week.
Okay, well, instead of that, I'm going to do 18. 18, 18, 18.
I like it. And
Okay,
I like it because I was thinking about this
okay.
today. What is something your parents taught you to appreciate?
Mm,
And I'm going to change that one up a little bit. And I'm going to say, what is something your parents or your grandparents taught you to appreciate? I'll give you both or either.
mm-hmm,
So, and or your grandparents.
mm-hmm,
Because for me, I always talk about my abuela. So,
mm-hmm.
mi mami y mi abuela.
Okay, I would say that mi mami and mi abuela taught me to appreciate trying to do your best at any task that you are given and to stick with it until it is completed with excellence.
So, what would you call that? Would it be perseverance or what would you call
It
it?
would it would
Determination
it
or
would
what?
be demanding the best of yourself and to persevere until you reach that level.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. And what did you give your children? That's my second part of the question.
Mm.
If I asked your
Oh,
children
if
that
you ask
question,
my children,
if I
they
asked
would
your children
they
that
would
question,
automatically say what is good or keep silent.
no, yeah,
They would say that. Yes, I use that a lot.
yeah,
And don't give up. I would think those two things. They would say, don't give up.
give up.
I would
Oh,
say
yeah,
those
don't
two.
give up. That's a good one. All right, brother.
Mhm.
First part of the question first.
I'm thinking back to my parents first.
Okay.
My father specifically, because when I looked at my 1952 birth certificate, he was employed at Robert E. Lee Hotel as a best boy. with a high school degree. And in 1952, to have a high school degree was considered an accomplishment. But he had to work with people who had a third grade education as a supervisor, etc. And so from that example, he taught me struggle, um, the benefits of struggle, because he fed his children on that job as a busboy. My mother was still trying to complete her high school experience because she was carrying my older brother. Well, I'll just leave it right there. So she worked at a hospital called the City Hospital in the laundry room. But my father was the primary money maker for the household. And he could not acquire the kind of job he wanted because of the tentacles of Jim Crow at that time. But he survived anyway. He struggled. He went from that job to Haynes Dye Finish, etc. He stayed in that industry for most of his life. In fact, he retired from that industry. That's mom and dad, the benefit of struggle. My grandfather taught me self-confidence. Now, why do I say that? As a young, maybe second grade, at the oldest, said, bruh, which is my nickname, you put something in that big head of yours and nobody can ever take it away from you. That was his way of saying, get you an education, son. And he put that in me very early, that I never doubted myself growing up. And he would make me compete against old men in the community, try to do math problems. He said, my son can beat you doing a math problem any old day. He would have me race against old men in the community, college newcomers. And so he put that in me very early. So I carried that. And I carry it today. I'm not, intimidated by anyone because as far as I'm concerned, you are only a human being. So am I. That's my story. I'm gonna stick to it. However, with my children, let me pass it on because I know you're gonna ask me that too. What did I tell my children? I got to put it in two categories. My wife told all my kids, read. Every holiday we celebrated, the gift they got was a book first. Anything else followed after that. Uh, I guess with me, I was a little rough father for my children. I have to admit, I was not as kind as I am today. I was very stern. And I'll give you one example. My daughter, when she got to be about 10th grade, I had a strict rule in the house. You got to be in the house by a certain time, or there might be a consequence. So I heard the gate open. It was 10:05. So I go to the gate. And I said, Salema, where have you been? It's 10:05. And her little cousin ran off in the car. I said, you see what your friend Chalet just left you, so you know you're not, in the right order. Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said, babe, I would never put my hands on you, but you have to be put on some kind of restriction. No, Daddy. I said, well, baby, I love you, but you'll be on, restrictions for the next 7 days. I hope you hear what I'm saying to you. We joke about it now because she would tell me that I couldn't go anywhere. Somebody tell me, Mr. L, your daddy? Oh no, I heard they would scatter. I went to a football game because she was what do you call them, flag girl? Yeah, flag girl on the football team. And as soon as I showed up, all the little interested parties would just leave immediately because I showed up. Anyway, that was my image as a father. I grew up eventually to give them more room, but so I passed it on to them that indeed, a caring person. One was to read, and mine was to realize I was like protector of my children, and they saw in me something that I didn't even realize. My daughter told me, she said, Daddy, I will watch you eat the last piece of chicken whenever we had food at the table. You would always let us eat first. I'm not even conscious of that. I'm just trying to put some food on the table. I'm trying to make it happen. But she said that I will always remember you doing that. You'd always give mama the breast or whatever she wanted, or because she loved wings and breasts, and you would eat the last piece of chicken because you like the back and the liver. I said, wow, well, these kids are really watching you. I'm not even conscious of what you're doing, but that was, I pass it on to them, but you got to take care of, yourself, and you got to be a producer, for yourself. And I always tell them, and I end with this, I would say, your first boyfriend is Eddie. These are boys and girls. His name is education. That's your first priority. Sons and daughters, do you hear me? What's your first friend? Eddie. The full name is education. And we focus in on that. And even today, they've been very successful, by the grace of Allah. And my daughter's a professor at Duke University. My other daughter's finishing hers up in North Carolina State, an engineer, and Fleming's doing pretty well. And Abraham out there in Denver, Colorado, doing extremely well in coding. So I thank Allah for that. And I thank Allah for not even being conscious of things I was doing as a father. I was just trying to get things done. All right, that's my story, and I want to end with that.
Alhamdulillah.
So before I speak, I wanted to hear from the audience. Okay, audience, our question for today is, what is something your parents and or your grandparents taught you to appreciate? Brother Michael.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
Alaikum
Alaikum
assalam.
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 When you mentioned the topic, I went straight to my mother's insistence that I look people in the eye. I was real shy, and I used to look down a lot when I talked. But she insisted that I look a person in the eye, and I still do that, And for modesty's sake, I don't look women in the eye, except for maybe the initial glance. but but yes, that was one thing that uh, and a sense of justice. The positioning, yourself to where you demand respect and you demand, uh, uh, you carry yourself in a way that requires people to respect you, and you work to nip disrespect in the bud. Sometimes with silence and sometimes with maybe an abrupt comment. My children learned from me to carry themselves with respect and dignity. I have four daughters and two sons. Uh, I think two of them maybe missed the lesson, and it was obvious in terms of how they were living, But the other four, uh, I'm thankful and grateful to Allah for all of them, but for the four that got the message, got the lesson. Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam, Brother Kareem.
Yes, I just want you to know that we do have people on A New Day for Al Islam Community Radio, and would it be okay if any of them said something?
Yes.
Okay. So that's just to let you all know that New Day for Al Islam Community Radio, if you have something that you'd like to share, that you've been listening to, please do. But I would just say that as far as me, William Kareem is concerned, I had a mother and father who were alcoholics. Coming up in Harlem, New York in the 50s and the 60s. But I did have the foundation was my grandmother. And my grandmother was one who made sure that my brother and I always had our Sunday suits, ties, and white shirts, and always sent us to Sunday school, which was downstairs. And they always gave us these little cards, and these little cards that told us about all the prophets. And she always made sure that we made our prayers, that we said a grace before we ate. And she made sure that we said our prayers before we went to bed. And I'd like to tell you what that prayer is. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord, my soul to keep. Pafashadai, before I wake. I pray the Lord, my soul to take. God bless Mama, Daddy, Susan, Doreen, Shanette, Grandma, Uncle, everybody. Make Billy and Ricky a good boy. Christ say, Amen. I mean, and me and my brother had that down. I mean, you talking about rhythmic? Me and my brother had that prayer down. Pat, it
You
sounded
were
like,
chanting, huh?
yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Tajweed.
I mean, my father was, like I said, he was an alcoholic, but I had a great respect for him because that's what he demanded of me. But one of the things that he always said to be a man among men. He's always be a man among men. And then one of his famous sayings that I remember of him was, greater love hath no man than this, that lays down his life for his friend. And so I always remember that. And before my father died, he was surrounded by his whole family. And I was on one side, and he turned over on one side, and I was on the other side of the hospital bed. And he said, I'm gonna die, right? I said, nah, you ain't gonna die. He said, oh yeah, I'm gonna die. He said, but there's one thing I want you to remember. He said, if you can be half the man that I was, you'll make it through life. And I said, he said, did you hear me? I said, I heard you. He said, repeat it. And I repeated that to him. And then I didn't see him anymore after that. And it took me years, before I really figured out what that actually meant. What did I give my children? Well, I'm a wordsmith. As I was with the propagators, and so Allah blessed me to have that rhythmic flow. And I gave two of my sons are wordsmiths or hip hop artists to that degree. But my always was part of my children's life. Always. I was always, the father in my children's life. Even if we didn't do well as far as the mothers were concerned, I was still there in all of my children's life. They can't say that, that I wasn't there. So that's what I gave.
Okay, anybody in your group wants to speak, they can speak, brother.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm somewhat like William, I guess. My mother always instilled in us to say prayer. And as I got older, I think I strayed away from that, not knowing how important prayer was. And they would give you these little prayers to say. You had to say Our Father, the Lord's prayers before going to bed, and put emphasis on it. And I laid me down to sleep. I had that prayer too, and pray over your food. And prayer was important. But my daddy, he always said, and I never did know what this word was till after he passed away. He would say, have some constitution about yourself. Always have some constitution about yourself. I didn't know what that meant. And today, now, I know it means have some dignity, stand for something. And it took Al-Islam to reveal to me the meaning of prayer, the meaning of constitution, knowing yourself. I think a lot of that I evolved with 7 other siblings in my family to Islam. And today I stand on that, and I have one child. Well, he's not a child anymore, he's a son, a grown man. And he's a believer. I thank Allah for that. And he thinks he's my daddy. He's trying to teach me now. And I thank Allah for that, because that's one of the things that I have lived for, to teach him Islam, that he can teach it back to me. And I just thank Allah for that. And I'm Sister Rashida here in Louisiana. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is what those sons do. Yeah.
Daughters,
I'll tell you one
too.
thing my mother used to say, I don't care how old you get, you still my baby. So mothers have the privilege of calling those sons, he's still my child.
Yes. But Brother William, you have more?
Anybody else? Okay, I think that's probably it right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Of course. Sister Tahida.
Assalamu alaikum.
Just tell us about Ruthie.
There's so much. My father, Arshil Brooks, was a hod carrier. He completed the 8th grade, and his thing was get an education so that if your husband leaves you, he just assumed that, his 5 girls, and one son was going to get an education. He said, if you get it, if you get an education, if your husband leaves you, then you can take care of yourself. He pushed education. My mother graduated from Langston University in 1942. Her degree was in home economics. She was the valedictorian of her classes. She didn't push education, but she modeled it. She helped us with our homework. She made sure that, we did the chores we were supposed to do. And that was, teaching through example, alhamdulillah. And they both were Primitive Baptist members. And we often had church in our home on Wednesdays. And until they, got their church together, the building together, and then they would go to church in different cities that instilled in us that God was primary in our lives. So my encouragement to my children, I think, is just to strive to be excellent. We had spelling bees, we had math contests, we did all types of things. And I know I pushed them a little hard. They used to tell me, they've told me since, Mama, you just did a little too much. Everybody else was outside playing and we was encyclopedia, ENC, what? Okay, so I'm like, but they all are doing well, alhamdulillah, and I'm at this point, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
You.
I I told you I was thinking about this weekend because I had to write this statement this week. I was talking to my advisor. I'd write this statement, this professorial statement of purpose, and I was looking back on it. I was thinking about the things my grandmother and my mother taught me. It's a little bit different than I mean, it's similar, but it's a little bit different than what you guys are speaking of, and it's and I think it's because education was always a part of what we do, but also just social responsibility. And I wanted to speak last to give you a good segue, brother, into what you're going to speak about today. I always speak that service is in my DNA because everybody in our family, from my grandmother, who was in the Midwest, they're not called council members, they're alder men and alder women, right? And so that's what they were. And they were always part of the townships, or my grandmother was an alderwoman, my aunt was an alderwoman, my uncle was alderman, my father, I call him my DNA donor. He was, he was on the school board, and then he was the school superintendent, he was the councilman, he was the mayor. And I grew up with Harold Washington. It's one of my godfathers. So I grew up around service. Every Friday, my stepfather was retired military, so I grew up in a military family. Every Friday we'd be at the church with my mom making packages for military families. So it was a different type of thing. But my grandmother, my abuela, that's what I call her. Most people learn Spanish, call it abuela, but we call it abuela. It's short for that. And mis tías, or aunties, and mami, and all the other women who influenced me, they taught us that we come from women who don't know what fatigue and adversity doesn't make us lackadaisical. So it's the other side of excellence, right? It's the other side. And that is not just about getting an education because you're afraid of something, but that failure, that even if you experience it, that you still have to experience life in and of itself. And so, because we come from this family that's led by faith, and so they were teaching us we can't shrink ourselves. And I didn't really understand it when I was younger, but I think the lesson that they were teaching us, that I had to think about when I was up in the mountains last week was that they were teaching us that we don't change ourselves and our truths or shrink to make that's supportive of other people's comfort. And I think that that's what I appreciate the most. Yes, we learned about education and that you must get an education and you must learn about your faith. But the part about our faith that we learned about is women of the church and women who were very God-led was that you don't change who you are. There was something I talked to my mom about this week, and she said, and I wrote this. She used to tell us that your purpose was already defined, and it's futile to explain yourself to people who could not even hear God whisper your name.
Mhm.
It is the only thing you needed to do was to let peace be the loudest thing in a room full of people who can't even understand the language, who are not fluent in the language of your faith. And I don't mean Arabic or 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 a language like this. I mean the language of the faithful. It said when you are walking in the light of a person who is rooted in faith, who is chosen, and who is covered by God, you can't cower yourself and you have to never give in, never give up, and never quit. You can bend but not break. And it's those lessons that lead to like excellence and that lead to what I'm going to give over to Fleming to talk about why we do the work that we do in not just civic engagement or community work, but the hard work in getting people to not just believe in why we have to participate, but believe in yourself enough to know that this matters, not just to the community, but it matters to you. And I think that when I talked about at the beginning about how hard these last few weeks have been, it's been hard because it's been disappointing. It's been disappointing that this is not about who I want you to vote for, or I want you, or why I want people to vote. It's been disappointing that that we have to convince people to believe that this is good for them. So I had to be in the mountains away from Wi-Fi and everything else and really just think about what that meant. And so what I give to my children is the same thing my mother gave to me. I'm number 4 of 6. And I used to get really frustrated because I don't have a loud voice. As a matter of fact, my voice is, well, it's like this now because I got allergies. But it was always like squeaky. My brother used to call me Pipsqueak, the one who number 3, because I was also short. And, well, I'm not real tall now, but I was always shorter. And so even the younger two, because my stepfather's like 6'7", those history daughters, they were always taller than me too. And so I have that that squeaky voice. And so I used to get really frustrated. My mother would say, and I think this is like the number one lesson. She said, the most powerful influence is rarely loud. It is often just it's quiet, but it's consistent. And I didn't know back then she was training me for leadership. And so I think that when I pass this to you, Brother Fleming, I think that's what I wanted to talk about. She just taught us that success is contagious, but so is mediocrity. So surround yourself with a circle of people who are going to push you towards that. Because you can be the greatest student, but if you surround yourself with people who are great with being mediocre, you can have the best laid plans, but if you surround yourself who are great with being mediocre or who are great with being less than, the chances are that you will be because you become the people who are in the rooms that you are in. So who was that? It was Brother Michael, I think, right? He said he gave his children all these lessons. That's the lessons that I gave my children, is that you want to be around people who inspire you to be better, who motivate you to do better, who encourage your discipline, who normalize growth, who make excuses uncomfortable, and who will love you even when it's hard. Because you become, no matter how hard who you are, you soak in all of those people in those rooms where you are. So be careful who you surround yourself with, but also be careful the rooms that you step into. My grandmother used to say, you let things into your spirit and you in your home and in your spirit. So be careful what you let into your spirit because it soaks into you, even sometimes unconsciously. So I tell my children, siga el plan. Follow the plan. Follow the plan, even when it's hard. And I let them be them. Move like water. Graceful and sometimes quiet. Because the right circle, it'll not just confirm who you are, like your identity, but it will enhance it. And I see. I use my voice, even if it's not loud, but it has a lot of volume. They can hear it on the East Coast.
Touche, touche, touche. That's pretty good, sis. Uh, when you were talking, Cheryl, my mind went back to a few things actually. My grandmother would say, "Do you ever watch the clouds?" When I was a little boy, but I'm trying to figure why does she want me to watch the clouds? Later on, I learned a lot about just watching clouds so we can learn from that. But they're very quiet most of the time. Take different shapes most of the time until a storm comes up. Then it's a whole different experience. But most of the time, you don't even hear a cloud. You just sit moving and you wonder, where's it going? Where's the wind taking the clouds now? So it's that silent conversation you have that's sort of inspired by the creation itself. Gives you a lot to think about. Um, so many things, so many things. But I want to give everyone a chance who would like to say something before we move on to our theme for today. I gave a few people a question of the invitees, and I'm going to share this question with the group because the theme was indeed civic engagement and community development. And the question that I asked all of them was two phases. One was, if you look in your community, starting with your neighborhood, what have you seen change in the last 5 to 10 years? And what have you seen change in the last 5 to 10 years in your immediate neighborhood? And the second part was in your city. The third part was in your state. And what influence do you have on either one of those, whether it be in your neighborhood, your city, or your state? And that was sort of get us started on the importance of civic engagement and community development. Let me see if I see any numbers. Anyone see any new numbers they don't recognize? 336 or a New Jersey number or a 914. I'm trying to see if I can see. I see a hand raised at a phone number. I'm not sure who that is. Okay.
Mohammed Sharif.
Oh, okay. All right. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Sharif.
Right. What was the first question about me?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
I said, what was your first question again, please?
Oh, the first question? Okay.
Yes.
If you look in your neighborhood, what have you seen change in the last 5 to 10 years? Then if you look in your city, what have you seen change in the last 5 to 10 years? Then look in your state. What have you seen change in the last 5 to 10 years? And what product you have in there, whether it's in your neighborhood, in your city, or in your state? Got it?
I think my answer be the same for all three: neighborhood, city, and state. That's when I've been asking other people to do the same thing. Go out into your neighborhood, especially during the school year, say around 2:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon, and see all of our children, grandchildren, are purchasing their products, their popcorn and cookies and all things like that from somebody else. That's going on in my city, my state, my town, everywhere. It's going on all over. I've seen that change going on over the last 5 to 10 years. And another thing, we see other people from other countries having their businesses, other businesses in our neighborhood too. Like as all the time that we used to have African American people, we were cutting our grass or had somebody else to cut their grass. And it's probably going on all over America. Somebody else from another country is mowing our lawn, cutting our grass, and all of this. Matter of fact, I see it on my block every day. Somebody else from other countries is operating their own business in our country, I mean our communities, our city, state, and also they are doing the job that we used to do. Somebody else is doing it. This happened all over America. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, there was a second part to that too. That was what has been your involvement in those three areas in terms of your neighborhood, your city, or your state?
My involvement, I've been trying to get people to take another look at Alice Islam. I'm one of the distributors of the Muslim Journal newspaper. And also I get the Thinker newspaper that comes out of Nasir Malcolm Shabazz. And I've been telling my people, to my next door neighbors and others in the community, to take a copy of the Muslim Journal. Sometimes they won't buy it. I just say, okay, just give it to me the next time you see me. Sometimes I've been leaving them in the post office. And veteran, I'm a veteran too. And they have where you can leave different papers at the VA. So this is what I've been doing, to trying to get the people to take another look at Alice Islam, and basically through our newspapers, because one thing we have here we have fallen off the we following. I'll just take another minute. We following other people. At one time in all of our neighborhoods, we have newsstands. I knew that probably in Carolina, Georgia, everywhere, newsstand. But now all the newsstands are just about shut down because a lot of people going online, they reading the paper, or others, the young, don't read the paper and newspaper, and we are following them. Instead of us taking this opportunity to increase our paper. I mean, everybody should be trying to put paper out someplace in Muslim Journal, but we followed the crowd. We stopped instead of supporting our people. Everybody else dropping it, and we found everybody else. We should be increasing. So that's what I'm doing, trying to get the people to take another look at Alice Islam in my neighborhood.
Yes,
Thank you again for that question.
Yes, so thank you very much for your response. I'm going to check again to see if any of my invited guests have come on. Let me make one comment while we wait patiently for them for another 2 minutes only. At the meeting I referred to at the very beginning on Lift Every Vote, we had a young lady to also sing Lift Every Voice, written by James Weldon Johnson, who was a former student of my wife. Did a fantastic job, of course. And then we had the ministers try to respond to how that's connected to Lift Every Vote and what can they do to increase that in their own congregations, etc. And one young minister said, we have to stop using old methods to get new things. He said, brothers and sisters, y'all got to be honest now. Most of our young people have left the church. You can't use that same methodology to get them engaged. You got to really go where they are to involve them. And he came up with a metaphor. He said, don't just be a, word that he used, an announcer, but be a guide and show them, and you'll get more participation from them. Very, very insightful young man. And then another one of the elected officials who I mentored before she became an elected official, he told her, he said, this brother Fleming right here told me a long time ago, when people try to influence you, ask them, were you with me when my mother carried me? If you were not with me then, don't try to form me now. I would tell them that to make them realize that indeed your essence comes from a higher authority than people. So don't let other people influence you to that degree. You communicate the best way you know how with your creator and get your guidance from him. Just a thought. Sister Cheryl made me think about that with her always insightful commentary. Okay, I don't see the invited guests on, so I'm going to go to phase two of the question that I had for them. And that is, how are cities organized? What authorizes the cities to even exist? And where do they get their charters from? I asked that question because I want people to realize there's a statutory obligation if you're a city council person, or for that matter, if you're a county commissioner. You have certain statutes that that state has given you to be responsible for, and many people don't understand that. But your charters, whether you're incorporated or unincorporated, in some communities, depending on their size, their influence, they choose to be an unincorporated entity. That too is approved by the state. The same applies for incorporated entities. Simple example, the city of Winston-Salem did not become a city until 1913. There were two separate cities. There was Winston, North Carolina, and there was Salem, North Carolina. Salem, North Carolina, for the most part, was founded by the Moravians. It's still controlled by them, and it's an oldest Moravian village. In fact, it goes back to even the time George Washington was president. He came through there and spent the night. They were some of the early settlers that came down from Pennsylvania looking for other places to establish themselves. So that's the first community from Europe that was established in this area. It used to be called Wacow. That's an old Indian name that became as Wachovia, which was a description of all this land at one point. They called it the stinky smelling swamp because fundamentally it was a swamp that they developed into an actual community. So the Moravians sort of established that community back in the 1700s. The city of Winston-Salem the city of Winston came along years later with industrialists. It was not a religious community. They called them the rabble-rousers because you could go over there and you could have a cigarette because cigarettes was the way the city got formed. A guy by the name of R.J. Reynolds came down from Virginia on a horse and established the first red factory that he produced what became known as Camel cigarettes. And those who know a little bit about history, especially World War I, that was the most popular cigarette he sold to those soldiers during World War One, and of course the second one was Salem. So those cigarette brands became multi-million-dollar entities for Richard Joshua Reynolds, and he established a series of factories in this community of Winston. And in time, the Salem community began to decline economically. Winston was increasing population, etc. So they combined into one city called Winston-Salem in 1913. Now, I discovered something. What's today? Monday, yes. I discovered something on Saturday that I did not know, very much related to what I'm discussing right now. In 1912, a young by the name of Darnell, African American, sued the city of Winston because he was fined $5 for buying a home in a neighborhood that had 4 white residents. Let me say that again. In 1912, his name was Darnell. He was fined $5 for buying a home that had, at that time, 4 white citizens on the same block on Highland Avenue. So the Civil Rights Trail entity had a sign posted the other day in honor of him because what happened after he got fined by the city, he appealed his decision to the Superior Court. He lost again, got another fine. He went all the way to the State Supreme Court of North Carolina, and they ruled in his favor that the city of Winston-Salem had no authority from the state to set up ordinances like that. It was not in the Constitution. So he won that case. Came back in 1914 eventually. So he was able to purchase the home that he had desired to purchase without the cost of a fine being opposed by him. And there's two parts of the story. Remember I said in 1912, he wanted that house because through a little valley, there was a school his kids could go to, and he wanted them to go to. And he was being resisted, like raising in the sun, but he succeeded anyway. Those that know the Lorraine Hansberry story know what I'm talking about. This man down there was honored with a registered historical marker the other day. And they asked me to make a few comments on the civil rights history once in Salem at the program. But just to realize that in 1912, this young man had that kind of fortitude. And he forced the state to agree with him, and he won a law case. This is 1912, brothers and sisters. So I'm using this as an example to show how we can influence your local community, your state community, as well as your city, if you realize that your essence is very, very critical and important. It's divinely inspired. So don't ever think you can make a difference. You really can. And let's go from the city to the county. I'll give you an example of how the county is organized in terms of Forsyth County, and others are very similar. The state gives authority to the county of what they can and cannot do. I'll give you two examples. One, the state says the county has the responsibility to fund schools, whether it be the public schools or the community college, et cetera. That's your obligation in terms of statutory responsibility. It also says you have the financial or statutory obligation to provide services, and they specify the services: Department of Social Services, public health, et cetera. That's an obligation on the county. Then the county has a responsibility for safety through the sheriff's department and the sheriff. And of course, at one point, most states appointed sheriffs in those counties when the population was much smaller. They didn't leave it up to the voters to do that. There was an appointment from the state to determine who the sheriff would be in that locale. Of course, that has changed over time. The fourth one for the county of Forsyth, of course, that I mentioned, it's something that's called community standards. That's the tricky one, because community standards include something like libraries, recreation centers, those kind of amenities that sort of complement everyday life. So that's based on community standards. Who determines what the standards are? It's the people. That's why your vote is so critical. Other people will set the standards for themselves, and you'll be left out of the picture completely if you don't show up first with your vote, and of course, always with your voice, to also share what your standards are, because that's a requirement from the state when it comes to the charter given to the county of Forsyth. And those are four big things. Other things are sort of left up to the community in a larger degree, but some things they have to do, others are optional based on what's called community standards. But all cities have a charter that the state authorized them to operate from. And if you really want to know what that city is all about, find the time to look at that charter given to your city from the state and see what the language was like then. You might be surprised because a lot of people never go back that far, but it's important to know the history of where you stay at. Okay, let's pause there for a second. We identified the essence of where these charters come from. That is a state obligation. I was asked to participate in identifying for Medina, a new Medina in Mississippi, to help them to determine if they want to be unincorporated or not from the state of Mississippi. And that's a project that ACGG is working on, doing some research on that now. Any questions before we go to the next item on the agenda here? We'll pause. Let's say for 30 seconds on for questions.
Brother Fleming, I have a question.
Shiva here in Louisiana.
So who would you recognize?
My question is, in our society, and with all the racism, the political conflict, a lot of the African Americans in the community, and I live in an African American community, and we work hard together to achieve certain things in our neighborhood. You know, sidewalks, street lights, bumpers, and we have one, and I heard Brother Muhammad, alhamdulillah, we have one Black man in our community that cuts the yard in one block. And he cuts everybody's yard. And we pay him. We like it that way. And we support him. But when it comes to policy and knowingness of policy, that was a time when we knew civic policies. But today, our society is such a corrupt society. Even when you do go to vote, today, and what my experience was here in Louisiana was so distorted. We didn't even vote for some of the people we wanted to vote for that was on the ballot. And so we were taught civic in high school. Our children don't know civics today, don't know who they are in a community or resident, or knowing that they can go down to the council, city hall, and speak out. So what do we do about that? Well, how do we teach our children civics to know you are a citizen, you have rights, you have human rights, you have civics rights? So how do we defray the thought of it? Because our children today is bringing in so much trends and new thinking until the elders are adapting to the new way of the way they're thinking. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question.
And I apologize for being loud.
Oh, no, you can be loud. You're not a cloud. You have the right to have a voice. And don't take that the wrong way now, please. I'm going to say very simply, you are the example for them to follow. I'm going to say that again. You are the example for them to follow. I ran for county commissioner in Forsyth County some years ago and won. First Muslim ever elected to a countywide position. And you know who knew the least about what county commissioners was all about when I would go into the community and talk to different groups? And I hate to say this, but it's true, so I'm going to say it. It was the Muslim community, unfortunately. Now I could go into other communities because they were involved in civic groups from real estate organizations, other civic organizations. I won't name all of them, but they were active in government. And so we cannot afford not to be active in government. And it boils down to you sort of being the example. Be encouraged. Know that their intention is not for you to be involved. Their intent is for you not to even think it's important. And that's why it's so very, very important. I taught civics in high school for about 30 years and African American studies. And I know even when I even designed the course, man, through other guys to make the course available to students in the Winston-Salem South Carolina school system. And even with that, it was like pulling teeth sometimes to get our students even enrolled in that course. But got to the point where civics was required by the state of North Carolina for you to graduate. The African American course that we taught was paired with sociology, so it became, quote, in their opinion, more attractive, even though we wrote it as a year-long course. And we used the same textbook that Wake Forest used, Winston-Salem State used, because we wanted to be a demanding course for our students. But I always encourage you, you have the spirit, Allah's given you the vision. You'd be surprised the influence you have, even in your family, if you are the example, not the preacher, not the one who's, as my daughter says, beat me over the head with a broomstick. No, she says a straw all the time. But just be the example yourself. And you know how important it is. You show up. I've done a lot of surveys when I worked on Wall Street based on, the Nelson ratings. You'd be surprised what kind of decisions are made when just 4 people respond to a survey. So don't let the statistics discourage you. Don't let what's coming to the community discourage you. You be the example, and you'd be surprised who's listening to you and following you. And that's the best answer I would have for that. You be the one from your example. Okay? Thank you so much for your question. Sister Amatullah, let's give Sister Amatullah a chance, please. She asked for us, and we're going to come back to Sister Cheryl. Sister Amatullah.
I appreciate the breakdown that you gave, Brother Fleming, and I think it's important for us to see how these things evolve. Like it wasn't just boom overnight, or that it is something that is out of our reach of accomplishing or affecting. But it's in the weeds, it's in the details. And with the pace of today's society, I would say most people don't take the time to get into the weeds to that degree. And so I think those of us who come to civic engagement. And I will say come to civic engagement because if it's not something that is dealt with, I think, in the home life, then there have to be incidents outside of the home life that impacts the individual for them to see the importance of civic engagement, civic and political engagement. Um, and I think there are many different roads where people come to that. It can be through um, your need for the education for your children to be improved. It could be for work, work experiences that make people see the importance of civic engagement. It could be from just an individual taking, like you asked us those questions about what has changed in your neighborhood, what has changed in your county, what has changed in your state, um, incidents from that. So, what I'm saying is, I think that the individual has to see what in their life is not what they want it to be, as far as benefits for them personally, benefits for their family, benefits for their community, before that fire of civic engagement is lit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just knowing from civics, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's not enough to keep people motivated. I had a conversation with a gentleman waiting online at the children's Eid celebration, as a matter of fact. Turns out he was a teacher, and we got into what is the difference. He asked me sort of a similar question like you did. Although Oakland isn't, my home where I grew up, the time that I lived in Oakland, he asked me, what have you seen that is different about the community? Now, I would say in Oakland, in the neighborhood that I spent the majority of time, I'm in a new neighborhood now. Um, the thing that changed the most has been demographics. The neighborhood was primarily African American when my mother moved there. It's now primarily Hispanic. And when you look at the community development projects in that neighborhood, the majority have come in the Hispanic portion of East Oakland. They have a CDC corporation that has been active. Um, if you look in the neighborhood that I'm talking about, there was a church, Allen Temple Baptist Church, that was very prominent in the politics of Oakland. In fact, or a good number, I can't say most because I don't know, but a good number of the city officials, say 25, 30 years ago, were members of that particular church. And they had a pastor who encouraged civic engagement. They constructed a senior living facility that is the only senior living facility past, say, in the East Elmhurst district that I'm talking about. Just recently, um, in the last 4 or 5 years, in fact, I went to an initial planning meeting. There was a planning meeting to put up affordable housing, and it's up now. Um, the majority of the people who attended that meeting were Hispanic. After COVID, if you go to downtown Oakland, um, my husband and I were just riding through it the other day. You go to downtown Oakland, the majority of small business locations are closed up, locked up tight, especially in the food service industry. Um, the restaurants have closed down. Small businesses have closed down as a result of COVID. They didn't have the structure to be able to withstand the impact of COVID on customers, relying on foot traffic, being downtown, relying on employees, um, the federal building, the city buildings that are down there. When the shift went to working from home, they lost their foot traffic. So there was an economic impact on the city, and the downtown area has not bounced back from that. But now what I see in that Elmhurst district is if you go on one major street that I know of, Bancroft Avenue, and in fact that avenue walks is on one side of where Master Worthing is. It comes into Bond Avenue and Bancroft. It is amazing the resilience. Muhammad Sharif talked about, you know, the people selling us food, are immigrants. I don't fault those immigrant people, and I'm not saying that Muhammad did. The reality is, I think our community, from the gains that we made from civil rights, some of our children became soft and cushy, and they take things for granted, and a lot has been given to them that when it comes to resilience or bouncing back, we become lazy. That's the only way I can put it. If you go, say, an hour before sunset to maybe 11, 12 o'clock at night, because I've been in the car on Bancroft when I visited my son, you have stand after stand of Hispanic people who have literally set up almost outdoor restaurants. And they have people driving up in their cars, people walking up to support them. These are folks who have not given up. They've seen the benefits that are available in the society if you work for it. And also because of ICE and DHS and all of that, many of them are very engaged in interfaith organizations that are really pushing for example, in the city of Oakland, um, they're pushing to the city council to change the legislation as far as sanctuary cities to be stronger to match the the legislation that exists in San Francisco so that Oakland can be a stronger sanctuary city. So what I'm saying is these are people who are coming from suffering, who see opportunity, and they have become, not just started, but they have become, I would say over the last 20 years, um, engaged in economic and community and political um, development and action, whereas the majority, I will say in this case, the majority of African American citizens that I've seen in Oakland, um, and it's very disappointing to see the younger people who are so wrapped up in the sports and the being an influencer, being a this, that, and the other. But the areas where you can really be an influencer, they've stepped back for the most part. Um, and they have very little interest for the most part in what makes our community stronger. In the 60s and the 70s, we had movements that were
Right.
geared towards civic engagement, geared towards human rights, civil rights. And that was the outlet for the young people who were coming up to see that they had to have, for them to have a better world, a better life, a better future, they had to become involved. It was a matter of survival to be involved. It was a matter of survival to protest the Vietnam War because we knew that our numbers were the larger numbers being shipped off to Southeast Asia. And as Muhammad Ali said, Viet Cong never called me a nigger. And that was a motivating um, impetus for high school and college people to get involved in the political arena and civil rights and all of that. We don't have those dynamics going on, as far as I can tell, for the most part. There are little spots of it. The two Justins in Tennessee, I'm encouraged by them. Um, a young brother who's running for um, lieutenant governor. I just saw the first advertisement to be aware that he was running. This brother, Michael Tubbs, was a young man who became the mayor of the city of Stockton, and he did very well there. Um, and he's been applauded and recognized nationally for what he was able to accomplish. Um, but for the most part, and I don't profess to be the most knowledgeable person in terms of the political engagement, but for the most part, where are, I'll ask this question of you and Cheryl, where are the 30, maybe mid 40 African American Muslim or Muslim um, individuals who are engaged in the political arena, but have not just engaged, but having a significant impact in the political arena. I know we have Latifah Simon here in Oakland. She's 50 plus, but who's coming behind her and others like her is the question that I have. We don't have the ear or the attention of that next generation down. And we need, I believe, we need to have the creation of a movement again, as we did in the 60s. Now, it took a long time because this has really weighed heavy on me that we don't have that going forward. You know, we're talking about civic and political engagement, but if you took, I would say, if you took a survey of the age group here on MAP5, you're not going to find any 20 and 30-year-olds. Well, I would be surprised if we did. And I'm saying that we need to get those 20 and 30-year-olds, bring them into the conversation and get them moving. That's so I'm sorry for taking so long, but that's been on my mind and heart.
I'm glad you shared. That's very, very important. I'm going to have Cheryl make a comment. I'll make one quick response. The meeting I referred to earlier at First Baptist Church was filled to capacity. And one of the presenters said, I want everyone who's 40 to 25, please stand up. 4 people stood up.
4 people.
He said, we're speaking to the choir. All these people are going to vote anyway. So where's our outreach to the young people? Of course, one of the people up on the panel, she was relatively young, one of the ones that I sort of mentored, but the majority of people were senior citizens. And they're engaged in different kind of community, civic organizations of their own. And they have their interests at heart. And everybody has the same problem. They recognize it. What can we do to engage young people? First, we got to give them something to get involved with that they're interested in. But I'm going to pause and give Cheryl a chance to make her comment, and then we'll recognize the other hands that I see. Sister Cheryl?
Let's take their comments because I'm gonna reserve it because
Okay.
I have something to say, but I'm gonna reserve it because I think that I want to contemplate how I'm gonna respond.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. I think I saw Brother Michael Amin's hand first.
Yes, yes,
We'll go to
sir.
Brother William Kareem. Yes, sir,
Thank
Brother
you.
Michael. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
We have to take, when I say we, I mean the Muslims, You know, the commentary that you made about the Muslims' lack of engagement. That's a Quranic and Prophet Muhammad obligation on us as Muslims that we're so deeply steeped in the environment of individualism and the social conditioning of individualism. By contrast, the Latino community or the Hispanic community, they have a an ethos. They have a focus called Mi Familia, the group focus. This is something that we are going to have to understand that there are consequences on Muslims for not being observant of that in terms of organization and leadership. We're obligated, you know, we've got standards from Prophet Muhammad in terms of uh, the Muslims who go on a trip, you know, they have to, if it's three or more, they identify who's the leader of the group. We have other standards from the Quran that we are not. Look, what we have in terms of guidance and the modeling of the guidance is much greater than anything else that's out there in terms of potential. But it has to be activated in terms of our awareness that we have an obligation. If we're not addressing the deficit of Muslim awareness in terms of being involved, um, it's because we're not observing the fact that we are obligated to organize ourselves. What we have is a much stronger ideology than anything else out there. It's no accident that the Latino and the Hispanic community are becoming more and more uh, engaged in Al Islam as an addition to their way of life of Mi Familia. It's no accident that they are coming into Al Islam in the numbers that they are here in America because they already have a standard. This has to be more. The resourceful men and women have to step forward. Uh, the children that we don't have engaged, the young people that we don't have engaged, you know, we're obligated to find strategies and ways. Uh, just the very virtue. Look, I have children that are not engaged in Al Islam, but they will speak up when someone misrepresents the religion. I have a son who's becoming more and more involved in the religion, and but before he became more and more, I talked to him on a relative, on a father level. You know, look, you know, you have to stay conscious of your obligation to Almighty God. Look, you have to be aware that whether you're conscious or unconscious, you have an assignment from God to deal with making the environment, the neighborhood, whatever, your household, uh, more in line with what God approves. We just have to keep stay connected. Someone has to have whether we have the facility at this moment or not. Someone has to keep alive the fact that there's an obligation for us to better organize ourselves, and there are consequences for not. And many of us are seeing it, those that are sensitive, we're seeing these consequences in our lives and in other people's lives because we're not doing what Allah says do. And God tells us very strongly to the believers, why do you say what you don't do? You know, so, you know, uh, we will get continued outside pressure. No, let me finish with this. We're told by our way of life that we have to struggle. It's called jihad. And we're also told we have to form alliances. This was back then, 1,448 years ago, or 47 years ago, almost 48. And it's still true today. We have to struggle with ourselves, the jihad inside as well as the jihad outside, because we've got influences that are working very hard to maintain this kind of individualistic mindset, ego issues, in terms of collective movement, ego issues in terms of following the example of Prophet Muhammad in terms of what Imam Muhammad identified as procedural integrity. This is something that we have in the example of the prophet, and it's something that the resourceful men and women have to come in line with. And again, there are consequences and repercussions for us not doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Michael. Brother William Kareem.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. I'm going, I could, I think that Michael said it all. He made some very powerful points, as far as the individualism is concerned. But the last point that he made, that's where I want to go with it about procedural integrity. And because there are people on the panel that have participated in the political process, I just like to ask about that because, we have this whole thing about uh, how do you keep your integrity as far as legislative bargaining is concerned? Um, I'm looking at something called log rolling or horse trading. That goes on. Lawmakers have to trade votes of project funds. How do you keep your integrity with that? And then there's the whole idea that's very popular today in politics, which has uh, brought about some corruption, campaign contributions, because money is, frequently given to political campaigns, for political alignment, and how do you, keep your political integrity when uh, you have to participate in legislative bargaining and campaign contributions.
Good question. Fleming?
I am the host. I could say 30 minutes on that one question that you just raised, but I want to give other people an opportunity. I give a 30-second response. You have to be true to yourself. People will respect you on the positions you take on certain issues, and you have to also realize that you represent all the citizens. There's two things going on. Your principle has to be a foundation. Your constituents are the whole population. In my case, it was the whole county of Forsyth when I served as commissioner. So I had three things I wanted, promote: quality education for all students, economic opportunities for all citizens, and safety. Those three things were my core value system for anything I promoted. And people knew that if Flame is going to get involved, it's going to be one of those three things so we can forget about getting this vote. So you stand on your principle. And then you realize at the same time that there would be issues. I'll give you one quick example. We had a dog issue. I know that sounds familiar, but we had animal lovers brought down to the chambers these huge dogs, St. Bernards, these German back dogs, because they had an issue with how the dogs were being kept by the animal shelter or not kept. And they want to make a point by bringing all these dogs into the chamber. I bet you there were more dogs than people. They were there to demonstrate their love for animals. Now, I looked at it, I said, well, they're committed and they're serious about this issue on how this animal center is, taking care of the dogs or the animals in the county. So I said, well, listen, I've got to do some homework on this issue. Let me go to the center tomorrow and see for myself what's really going on before I cast a vote on this matter. And it's surprising to me how many people remember me saying that, because they said, Fleming, no matter what you did on the county commission, you were always honest. You never said what you would not do, and you never try to pretend what you would not. And people respect that in politics. So I tell people all the time, we're not following the prince. The Prince's document was written a long time ago. The essence of it was, by any, well, you have to sort of, the goal of your achievement is, you have to sacrifice things to get to that goal. But that was a very diabolical way to do politics. So we don't follow the Prince orientation. We do things based on principle, and you only stay there as long as you can fulfill those objectives you have for the community's benefit. That's really your motivating. You want to improve the life of the community, not deter it. And people will tell you, I had a senior citizen tell me, Fleming, this person is a gambler. That person is a crook. This person you stay away from. When she was identifying all the elements, I call them quicksanders in the community. She said, brother, you have a good heart. Stay away from this one, from that one. And people respect you because of your character. Sally T. Mitchell, I'll never forget her. And she loved her little Kool-Aid, but she had volumes of worth to guide me along my way as a young county commissioner. In fact, I've served as Board of Elections Director. I've done a number of different things. I won't talk about all of that, but my public service was based on the things that you told me about. So you don't give up on the process. Politics, economic development, social development, all those three elements impact your life, whether you like it or not. So you want to have some influence on those three things if you're concerned about today and tomorrow and for your grandchildren. You got to be engaged on some level. Maintain your principles and be for real with people. You can make a big difference. You'd be surprised how many people support you and never say a word to you because of your principles. All right, Cheryl, I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you want to reflect a little bit. I know you have a lot to say, and I want to give you an opportunity to say whatever you want to say, sis.
I'll start with answering that question. That question, I think, is easier when you can stand on principle and you can stand on it, right? You can stand on it unapologetically, and you are unwavering on those principles, but not everyone can, if we're being honest. If we're being honest, there's too many of us um, who owe ourselves and who owe our communities apologies. We owe apologies for pretending, we owe apologies for never doing enough, for never standing on the principles that we said we have, for never believing that if we stood up for what's right, that the community would have our back. But then the community also owes us. The community owes us for not proving that if we stood 10 toes down for what we believe in, that the community would be there. Because I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of times, and Brother Fleming can probably co-sign with me, when we do stand, we stand alone. And so I'm not willing to dim my own light for anyone. I'm not going to make myself small so other people can feel big. My grandmother used to say, never burn yourself so other people can feel warm. But not everybody's going to do that. And I recognize that. So there's a lot of people who will stay in places where they're not meant to be longer than where they're supposed to. There's a lot of people who don't like rejection. So they'll change themselves to keep from being rejected. Rejection don't bother me. It is what it is. It's part of what happens, right? So sometimes you believe the lies about your self-worth and you let people convince you of who you really are. And if you don't have that solid core, if you don't have something else convincing you that, if you don't have something that tells you who you are, if you're not strong in that from the very beginning, those voices can change you. Those voices can make you believe something different. And no amount of reading scripture, no amount of prayer is going to unsettle that. And so when you're 60, 70 years old, you have something to pull from. But when you're 20, when you're 30, and you still have those wavering feelings, it's hard to convince because you're not as strong as you will be when you're 40, 50 years old. And I'm saying that from experience, having been in this world for those 5 decades. I get you. I get it, Brother Michael. That's easy to say. That's harder to live. That's easy to say. That's harder to live. And as a woman walking around in this black and brown skin and coming from this black and brown community, I just heard what you guys said. I come from La Familia. I come from that community. And I come from a community, both communities, black and brown, that keep getting pitted against each other. But I also come with the realization that as I was listening, I wanted you guys to understand that there are those who profit from our misery, those who profit from us not participating, those who profit from our heartbreak, those who profit from our questioning our value, those who profit from rewriting what our identity is, those who profit from us fighting one another, those who profit from us not speaking up, those who profit from our silence, those who profit from us not participating, those who profit from their lack of accountability, those who profit from us not apologizing to each other for not being there for one another. There are those who profit from us saying things like, oh, just pray on it. No, do. You can't just pray on it. You must do. We have children who are growing up way faster than their heart is ready for, way faster than their mind can process. You can't just take a 20-year-old or 30-year-old who has never experienced anything and throw them into the mix and expect them to pull from a bank of knowledge or experience in situations that they don't understand. We must be actively mentoring, which I believe is Sister Amatullah's, what she's asking about. And Sister, correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
What are we
exactly.
doing? What are we
Exactly.
doing? What are we doing? I know what I'm doing on my end, and that's what I've been working towards. I teach, as she knows, a series, 6-month series every Sunday. And they think they should get a paycheck because they're there all day. You want to run for office? You want to be appointed? Then this is what you must do. I don't even get paid for this. I feel like they owe me a paycheck. But every time we swallow our truth, every time we don't look in the mirror and say, what do I need to do different? Because it's not enough to say, what is the community needs to do? What do I need to do different? What are my needs that are not negotiable? What do we need to do to teach that our voice isn't optional? That your heart doesn't need to be protected? What do we need to do to make sure that not only are you not looking that woman in the eye, but what do we need to do to make sure, especially the females who are running in office or already in office, how do we protect them? Because saying don't look her in the face is not enough. Because that's your value. But I can tell you the people who are no Muslim, these know their value. So when I'm walking into a meeting or I'm walking into an event alone, I may be covered by my angels, I may be covered by God, but them bullets, and I'm not talking just bullet from a gun, I'm talking about the bullets from the journalists, the bullets from other people in the room. What are we doing to make sure? So the apologies, I can sit in and make sure I'm doing the right thing, but the community also has to be there. So I'm looking different. And I'm also, the other thing I want to say is this. We need to take a moment to say, what are we doing to give back joy? What are we doing to take back joy? Take back joy. It's one thing to say, okay, you should participate in civic engagement because we want cleaner streets, we want safer parks, we want our grocery prices lower, we want, my grandmother used to say, don't bargain with your peace. Don't raise hell, raise standards. Somebody called me a hell raiser the other day, and they said, "What are you doing? You raising hell?" I said, "No, I'm raising standards." And they got quiet. Troublemaker? No, not troublemaker. I'm raising good, because hellraiser has a negative connotation to me, right? And I don't like it. And so, and you don't know what's on in the backside of that person's intention when they're calling you a troublemaker. And I know that's what John Lewis said, but to me, I don't associate me with hell at all. When you associate me, you associate with me with doing good. And when I said this to a friend of mine, she said, "I never thought about it." And I told her, my grandmother used to say, "Just think about something. Everything that gets put in your soul, everything that gets put in your spear, you think about those words having meaning." So I want to tell you something, and I want you guys to take this with you today. You're allowed to feel good, even when things aren't perfect. You're allowed to laugh, even when something is unresolved. You're allowed to get up and dance in your kitchen at 7 in the morning. You're allowed to dance at 6 while you're cooking your favorite meal, even when everything seems like it's falling apart for no reason at all. Because there's power. My grandmother used to say we have soft power, right? You might not have the power of a fancy job with a long title. You might not have the power of a bank account with 6 figures, but you have the power of joy. You have the power of choosing to be joyful and positive in the middle of real life. That's spiritual. That's a spiritual joy. That's resistance to all of the things that try and break you. She said we may bend, but we don't break. That's the most radical thing you can do, is to be joyful when other people are trying to break you. That's resilience. Yes, Michael. That is resistance. And what I want you to do, I want us to choose joy. Don't wait on something. Joy doesn't have to be at the end of something. Oh, I finished, I accomplished something. Now I can be happy. Oh, I I scored something on a test, or I finished an assignment, or I have a new grandchild, or a new child, or my child graduated, or something. No, joy is the middle of the journey. I was walking. Those of you who know me, you know I use 4 arm crutches to walk, and I've been walking this hill. I didn't wait till I got to the top of the hill. I got to the middle because it was tough. And I was happy. Then I got to the crest and I was happy. I got to the top and I was happy. I came halfway down and I was happy. And I got home and I was happy. You celebrate every accomplishment, because joy is not at the end, it's in the middle of the journey. We should be joyful. Celebrate joy. Don't wait for circumstances, just let it show up. So why are we participating in civic engagement, brothers, sisters? Because you want to claim back your joy. We have lost the joy. Black people are joyful people. People of the diaspora are joyful people. That's black, brown, indigenous, and everything in between have always been joyful people in the middle of being shackled. They were joyful people. Your ancestors were joyful people. In the middle of chattel slavery, they were joyful people. They found a way to be joyful. They found a way to be spiritual. They found a way to be connected to their creator. Don't let people steal your joy. And you can get it back. You can get it back through your civic engagement, whatever that means. And they're trying to steal that, because if I can keep you miserable, if I can keep you from realizing that you have the power, you have the power to reclaim your positivity, to reclaim your joy, to reclaim your own happiness, to reset the temperature, the atmosphere in any room, to make them bow. If you know that you have that power, it's soft power. Like I call it, move like water, right? Water doesn't wait for you to tell it where to go. Water just moves where it wants to go. It's quiet, it's calm, it's patient, but it's powerful. You can't control water, and you can't control us if we do what we need to do. So joy does not have to be loud. Joy does not have to be, it doesn't have to tell people what it's going to do. It can be strategic, but it comes from inside and it lets you live life the best way you know how, but you must participate in it. So let it be full, let it be loud, claim it, and just do it. That's part of civic engagement that I love the best. So, Brother Fleming, to your question, I do it because it gives me a different type of joy. Because when I see the results of it, it's, and you can tell them how you feel, but when I see the results of what I do every day, that results in the results of my civic engagement gives me a kind of spiritual joy that is unmatched by anything else I do in life. Es todo.
Thank you so very, very much.
Brother
People
Fleming.
have to know that you care. Let me just share one 5-second story here. How I got involved in running for elected office. I had a senior citizen tell me, "You're always criticizing the politics. I've heard you say 1,000 times, say one thing and do another. But Fleming, let me tell you something. You got 5 babies to feed. Politicians influence the cost of bread. You want to feed your 5 babies? Get involved." Now she was a county commissioner. She's returned back to her creator now, but she was the one that really got me specifically involved in politics locally. And I carry that with me. It's a life-changing experience to help people. You have to have that internal engine in you sometimes to just get satisfaction from helping people. And growing up in a grocery store that my grandfather owned as a child, I saw that in practice. I saw him give people credit, even though the sign said cash today, credit tomorrow. I also saw him put his hand in his pocket to remind you, "I want to see you on Friday." And people knew exactly what he meant when he said that to them. And so, when I lived in New York, I lived in Brooklyn for a while. And I would see the Hispanic family live, 12 or 13 of them in one little apartment down the street on my fed. I said, wow. And then I thought back, when my relatives came from South Carolina to Winston-Salem, they stayed with Uncle Scoop. We called him Scoop. His name was Albert Jackson. They would stay in his house, they got enough feet, get their own house. My grandfather had a house on Carver School Road. He let them stay there until they got enough feet to get their own house. So that idea of helping each other was indeed a part of our environment during that time. And by having a grocery store in the community, people could come there and get food on credit. We had a fish market right beside it that I hated as a child because they had to clean fish. And fish scales don't come off easily. But that was the environment that I grew up in. Okay, so serving people has been a part of my DNA for a long time. I'm gonna stop there because, as I said, I could go for another 30 seconds just on that one idea alone. Growing up in that kind of community, I want to give someone else. Go ahead, Sister Amatullah.
Can I want to get down to practical steps.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at practical steps that we can use. In community organizing, one initial practical step is engaging in one-on-one. And I'll give you an example of that. We go to Jumat Friday, those who are able to go. And there might be a brother or a sister that you've seen for 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe 50 years. Maybe you give them the greetings, you might nod, you might, blah, blah, blah. What do you know about that person? So you have to make a committed effort as a community organizer to make a time to agree with that person. Hey, we're going to meet. Let's have coffee. Let's have chai latte is my favorite. Let's sit down and talk where you get to know one another, your background, your history. So I challenge people who are part of this broadcast today to do that. Identify one person, maybe two, if you can, that you between now and the next time that we meet that you have some kind of time set aside to sit down and talk about that person and to share your backgrounds. Okay, then the second thing I want to do, I want to ask Fleming and Cheryl, because both of you have talked about mentoring young people or teaching in a formal setting. Cheryl, with your You Want to Enter Office course. This is what I want from you and ask others who are listening to try this. I looked in the masjid about six or 8 weeks ago, and I was looking at young people, high school to mid 30s, and I was trying to identify, maybe one or two was early 40s. I was trying to identify, who can I approach to find out if they're interested in politics or civic engagement, or encourage them or refer them to people who can help them in this area. Who can I approach? I didn't see a single person, and I was really concerned about that. So, Fleming, what did you look for in the people that you mentored in terms of encourage them for civic engagement? And Cheryl, what do you look for in those who come to your course um, to get a sense of, do they have the stuff? Do they have the heart? Do they have the purpose to be able to enter that arena? So I pose that to both of you, since you've had practical experience in the areas that we're dealing with. Give us maybe 4 or 5 characteristics so that those who are on the broadcast today, we can go back to our community. It doesn't just have to be the masjid, it could be your neighbor or whatever, and look and see. Like, I have a little sister, she's just a natural entrepreneur. She's sort of like my daughter. Since she was about 7 or 8, she'd come around, you want to buy this? You want to buy it? I'm doing it. So I've taken on to heart, I got to get her to help her with her entrepreneurship. But I'm looking to identify those that we can encourage in terms of civic engagement in politics or political engagement. So, Fleming, first you, what do you look for? And Cheryl, what do you look for? So the rest of us can go out and scan our environments and see, okay, maybe this person, maybe that person, and maybe no person. Maybe you got to go somewhere else and look. Fleming.
I'll start off with a two-pronged attack. We have a course called ACE, Ambassadors for Civic Engagement, designed for young people, that ACGG put together several years ago. And we had the biggest response from Milwaukee, believe it or not. But those students really got engaged, and they had to do a project in the communities when they finished the course itself to demonstrate they understood what we were trying to do. So their interest level is the first indicator. You can't make interest. They have to have some interest of their own when they come to the table. But the people who I worked with when I was the county commissioner at Winston-Salem State University had a course that I used to teach down there. And we did some economic development in the city as a result of that. So I went to the professor and asked him, does he have any students who also have an interest in being interned on county government? So we got 2 students in that population. But I've learned a couple of things from that experience. If the students don't have an interest to pursue it, you can spend 2 years with them, get no results. So you got to first assess, are they really interested? And you only know that by working with the student and sort of assessing their interest level along the way. But give them the opportunity to learn what the environment is all about. I even let them sit in my chair sometimes as county commissioner, and I give them a script to read. They were frightened to death, but I want them to have the experience of what it's really like, a real live experience. So I think that's the starting point. And you don't know if your child is interested until you give them a chance to participate. So always be inviting to those kids to say, look, how do you think decisions are made? Start where their life is at, in the recreation department, in the school setting, on the streets in front of your house. Who makes those decisions? And how are they made? You can go to a whole gallery of things. There's something called 40 assets that every child should have that I use quite frequently, in fact, when I'm dealing with young people. What is their own interest level? Assess that first, and then go from there. Have a somewhat of a curriculum. That's what we do with ACE, Master Civic Engagement. We give them a foundation of knowledge first on how things should work, and then give them a chance to practice that in some kind of capacity. So I would suggest interest level, have some kind of engagement at their level, now, not your level because you're grown and old. Don't take that the wrong way, but something they want to do.
Wait a minute now.
I'm old too. I'm a young 74, so I'm only talking about myself. But have something that they really have an interest in. And I
I
give you
just
one.
had a birthday a couple of days ago, so when you talk
Oh,
about old,
oh,
I'm real sensitive. I'm
I
real
am so
sensitive.
sorry. Forgive your brother. I did not mean it from the heart at all. Believe me, believe me, believe me. Uh, but I
So
have
okay, so Fleming,
yes.
if so, listen to what you're saying. So if I go back to the masjid or wherever, and how do I, how do you suggest bringing ACE to the person to be able to assess their interests?
I'll use a high school experience that I had not too long
Okay.
ago at high school. I went there because I was invited to come to talk about civics. And I asked them, what's your number one concern in this high school?
Okay.
Their concern was the cafeteria food.
Okay.
Forget about all that other stuff. They wanted to change the cafeteria food to something they really wanted to eat. So I said, okay, let's think about this then. Who do you think makes a decision about the food that you eat in the cafeteria? How is that process set up? Let's write some notes to me on who you think actually makes that decision for you. So I read through the notes and I said, well, some of you are close, but we need to get a little closer. That decision is not made by your principal. It's a decision made by this group called the school board, and they have a department that sort of controls that. So let's see if we can get our parents involved in helping you change the food that you have in the cafeteria. We need some people that are 18 years of age or older who vote. That was the sort of starting process.
Okay.
That was just one small example. Before I even started talking about civics, I want to know, what is your interest level? What are you really concerned about? And it wasn't government per se. It was
Okay.
indirectly related to government because they wanted to change the food in the cafeteria. That's one example. Another group I worked with, I may have shared with you, I went to some young lady's house who was legally blind and bedridden.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I may have shared that with her. But her concern was just having access to the process of voting. And I said, wow, here we got people out here able-bodied, and this young lady is blind and can't even get out of her bed, but she was determined. She had that kind of interest level, intense. Okay. She was not going to be left by that process. So those are two examples. But the interest component is fundamental to everything else I do. That's been my experience.
Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Honorable Cheryl Sudduth. So you get this. I've identified a person. I refer them to you. They're in your course. What do you look for?
So it's a couple of different things, and I use a different rubric that for students than I use for other experienced candidates. So I think that a couple of things. So I don't just work with students, or I like to say younger candidates. So not all candidates are younger than I am. There's, as a matter of fact, a considerable number are usually my age or older, but they're new to politics.
Okay.
So they're just new candidates. But when I'm looking at students per se, I'm looking for someone who I don't, and I may just look at something a little different. I'm not looking at popularity or someone who sits on like who already has a bunch of titles in school. Oh, I'm the student government leader, or I sit on I'm the student representative on the school board. All that's great. Just means that, somebody picked you. I'm really looking for natural leadership. And so a lot of times what I'm looking for, I'm watching. And I'm watching to see, it might be that one who stood up for other children, during who wouldn't let a bully pick on a child because that shows like genuine empathy. And it also shows some initiative. And because a true civic leader is a servant leader, I'm looking for a demonstration of that. So if I haven't observed it, I may ask a situation that's going to bring that out. Because you need those types of intrinsic values that's going to help you in those real life situations.
So
And they would,
empathy and when you say natural leadership, you're talking about empathy, willingness to stand up for others or to serve.
um, some kind of some kind of ability to really step back and take themselves out of the situation and know that it's not about you.
Okay.
And a lot of times it's hard, especially when you're young, to not center yourself because a lot of adults have that problem of centering themselves in situations and decisions in and and to separate the fact that when you're making decisions, when you're considering legislation, when you're considering um, uh, arguments for or against, while you're bringing forth your experience, where you're bringing forth your background has a weight on it, it still is decentering yourself when making the decisions. And that's a nuanced perspective. So when you're young and you don't have that experience in decentering, you have to be able to have this really collaborative mindset. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for, okay, how do I have this? Because it's really collaboration is there's an innate ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone has it. Even people who are trained in collaboration don't have the innate ability to sit back and say, okay, there's a give and take, there's a negotiating that has to happen so that I can have this unified, diverse view and I can bridge whatever divide that we came to the table with so that teamwork can be fostered and we can come to a conclusion that um, it will be a win-win where everyone may not get everything that they hope for, but that no one walks away a loser. And that is hard to teach, especially to really young people. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for people who have resilience, but who are also adaptable and agile. So a lot of times you might not get that from the one who sits on the student council, but you might get it from the leader of the football or the baseball or the basketball team, who are usually least likely to be who are least likely to be the one who heads the student council, but they are a leader in a different sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that sometimes we label or we pigeonhole some of the athletes and we don't look at them as civic leaders, but they probably could be groomed to be civic leaders because they've been leaders in those sports for a reason. People listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
They are listeners. They're listeners because they're coachable. And I think I was an athlete and my sons were athletes. My daughter's an athlete. And I tell you, when I talk to them about politics, they really, especially my daughter, they're really in tune to it because they're used to looking at all sides of an issue because they're coachable. And what I've learned that when you're coachable, you are used to listening to someone else's view. You're used to being adaptable. You're used to communicating, and you're used to, like I said, collaboration.
Okay.
And I think the other two that I would say is being authentic, being communicative, learning how to communicate, and again, the stewardship, that kind of leadership. So I'm looking for those things, but I'm looking for them not by just asking questions, but by watching and observing them in their natural environment. So a student in their natural environment would be in school or would be in their community. So that's what I look for when I'm looking for a leader.
Okay, so break down when you say to be authentic because people use that in today's society all the time. What do you mean by be authentic?
Authentic means that you're not doing it for like likes. You are who you say you are, right? So if you're voting a particular way, you're voting that way because it is based on um, you're informed, you are, and you are um, you're going to stand on it. You're going
Okay.
to like remember we talked about before. You're willing to stand on it, even if you're the only one who's standing on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and yeah.
Thank you both.
We
So
need a
I
part.
so I
We need a
challenge
part two.
myself. I challenge myself and everyone who sees this, whether you're with us now today or a month or a year from now, you come back to the YouTube channel, um, to try both things. And when you're trying to identify an individual or a group of individuals, whoever, go to the ACGG website, look up the ACE program, review what Sister Cheryl has shared with us as far as what she looks for in the participants in the course that she teaches about entering political life, political engagement, and challenge ourselves to identify individuals in our community who might be people that have this interest or who um, who are coachable, who could benefit from what was shared to us today by Fleming and Cheryl, and try to get them into programs that will help them to become our future leaders. Thank you, Fleming, for that time.
Thank you very much. And I know we need to make an appeal for a fundraiser that literally starts today. I didn't get the script, but I understand my co-host got a copy of the script to invite people to contribute $9.99 per month or something along that way.
Before you
Anyone
do
of you
that,
have that?
before you do that, Brother Fleming,
Okay,
Michael
yes.
Fleming has had his hand up for quite a
Oh,
while.
okay, Brother Michael, go right ahead.
Yes, thank you. Uh, Something that the Honorable Cheryl Sudduth says all the time in concluding the program, in terms of doing something because it's the right thing to do, with no no
Nation.
interest in having something that that you will get out of it. Just do something for someone because it's the right thing to do. You don't hear it much nowadays, but it's still true that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And care in terms of interest, we pay attention and show young adults, children, that we have an interest in them, because of the environment that we have, where there's so much energy about selfishness, me, that when we show a concern for others, you know, it gets their attention, and it opens them up to really see us. What is this person that's showing me attention, showing me a regardfulness? What is this person about? Who is this? So these are very basic and common sense things, but it seems that we've lost touch with, you know, just even with our own family. What are they interested in? It's not just about us. We want to know what this future generation, what's on their mind. What are their hopes? What are their fears, especially? Because there's so much fear being introduced into the social environment. And I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Michael. Yeah, too. I think maybe Michael Jackson said it to the man in the mirror, change the world. Should have said the person in the mirror, but nevertheless, it's so important. And I vividly recall a lecture that Imam Muhammad gave us entitled How You Can Really Impact the World That the Muslim World is Missing, and that's individual relationships. You have to have that to really see, I don't care if it's your family, for your neighborhood. If you don't have a relationship with people, it's like bumping your head against a brick wall. So getting those relationships established. One book I read about how young Ali was, he was about 10 years old. Uh, the direct cousin of Prophet Muhammad, when he got attracted to him and what he was doing. So maintaining those relationships are very, very critical, brothers and sisters, inshallah. But I want to at least give a moment for our fundraiser. I don't have the script in front of me, but we have to raise funds. We have what is it called? Radiothon? It used to be called Radiothon. What's the name of it now? I didn't get the script. Who has the script in front of them? Anyone?
The theme is blooming and grooming for excellence.
Okay.
Blooming and grooming for excellence. And we are asking people to donate today by giving to community-wide Shura conference, or info at cwsc.us. We are believer supported. We believe in you. So you can call in your donation by phone at 910-317-0297, and a representative will be there to assist you. You can make a one-time or a recurring contribution, which enables us to better forecast our operating revenue, and know we have your support each month to maintain and expand operations. If you have any difficulty at all in making your gift, please call us at 910-317-0297. That's 910-317-0297. And as I said, a representative will be happy to assist you. Our most popular giving level is $9.99, or 33 cents a day. And it's a small individual amount based on all of us doing our part to ensure our intelligentsia is strong and ready to remake the world. A recurring contribution means the monthly amount is automatically deducted from your designated account to CWSC. You can cancel at any time. And of course, while your contributions are tax deductible, because CWSC is a nonprofit 501c3, it is the multiplied blessings of charity, especially during this month, that give the greatest rewards for our generosity. If you would like to mail in a gift, make your check or money order payable to CWSC and mail to CWSC, Marina Village, 4905 34th Street South, number 185. That's in St. Petersburg, Florida. 33711-4511 is the zip code. So we ask for your support so that CWSC can continue in the great work that it is doing. And AM360 Daily Broadcast is a critical part of that work. It's not the only part, but it's a very significant part. So we ask for your continuing support. And I can put in the chat those phone numbers if you want to, and the website, so that you'll have access to being able to donate. Okay, did that help, Brother Fleming?
Yes, quite a bit. In fact, I'm going to encourage you, add 1 cent to that $9.99 and make it $10 a month. It's not that much to give a flat $10 a month to a very good cause. It allows us to have a voice in a world of all kind of voices that we're encountering every day, at least a voice based on some guidance and good thoughts from MAP5, which is brought to you every Monday, same time, same station, from the East and the West Coast, all across the country. So with that, I want to give our beloved Cheryl Sudduth, our honorable Cheryl Sudduth, a chance to close us out. And I'll say a little prayer at the very end before we give the greetings of peace and blessing. Cheryl?
It's been a great day. This is a great day to to say to you that get involved. Get involved in any way that you can, whether that's, well, not whether. I want you to do a couple of things. Not just vote and be civically engaged yourself. You vote, take 5 people with you, and get them to take 5 people with them. If you don't understand something on the ballot, contact. I'm a volunteer, Brother Fleming, on the East Coast. On the East Coast.
Okay.
And then on the West Coast, Sister Amatullah and I are here. And I volunteer myself for the West Coast and even part of the Midwest and that other coast over there. If you don't understand something. Don't forget the judges. Don't forget the judges. We vote for judges too. We vote for sheriffs will be coming up in a couple of years, except for in a couple of areas, judges and sheriffs are right now, but usually they're in the presidential year. But there are a few municipal judges that are on the ballot right now. And we're going to have more conversations about this before November. But this primary is mostly county elections and up. But don't go another day, not one more day, without doing something for someone just because it's the right thing to do. And don't expect anything in return. Don't expect any favor or, celebration or even a pat on the back. Just do it because this is what you should be doing. My grandmother used to say, we bend, but we don't break. Be unbreakable. Be unwavering. Be unyielding. Be the kind of people that we come from. She told me when I was young, and I want to tell you guys this because I actually put this on my resume, and someone say something to me. They said they've never seen anybody do this. Well, they said it out of admiration. I put on the top of it. It said, built from the storms, built for the fire, and built for the chaos, built to lead. Because I am no longer apologizing for who I am. I never did apologize anyway, but I'm no longer hiding from it or shrinking from it. But she said we come from women who were built from the storms, but we were also built for the fire. And I want you to know that since we come from the diaspora, you were built from those women. You were built from those men. And we now have to be those kind of people who are unbought, unbeholden, unbreakable, unshakable, unwavering. No comprado, no devuelve, irrompible. And we must face life that way. Because when you look at life, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will also change. Those are her words. I give them to you, and I give them to you this day before I turn it back over to mi wonderful amigo on that other coast. And we ask you to tune in again next week, every Monday, 10 a.m. or wait, let's see, 1 p.m. on the coast. Yes, the sun rises there way too early. Even the birds don't want to get up.
Oh, man.
In the Midwest, where we have a saying, do it, don't talk too much about it, just get it done. And on the West Coast, they said noon in the Midwest. And at 10 a.m. on the West Coast, W's up. And next week we have a treat for you. We have one of your favorite imams coming back to discuss, Sister Amatullah.
The Quranic Foundation for Muslim American Citizenship.
Mm.
Yes. So do your homework, and we can all be a catalyst for change if we do what we should do in this civic engagement space. And with that, brother, I turn it back to you to close us out in prayer.
And so, Brother
Okay,
Fleming, can I just interject this? I did put in the
please.
chat, the contact information to help us with the fundraising, and also for questions about voting, Engage Action. They have a good tool called My Muslim Vote Turbo Vote.
Mm.
.org, and if you go to there, you can, you enter your state, and you can get information on your ballot, and information that can help you,
Yes.
inshallah.
Well, thank you very much. We need all of that information. I couldn't help but float back to Africa for a moment here. Listen to our distinguished Sister Cheryl. I've been over there about 4 or 5 times. I've been in those caves, dungeons where people came out of. And the first time I went down in there, I put my hands on the wall. I was very dark down there. And I said, Allah, why do we have to go through chattel slavery as a people? And in the recess of my soul, as quiet as I could get, I heard this: you are the answer to the prayers of your ancestors.
Right.
So we should always maintain that strength in our internal evaluation of ourselves and never stoop down. You always stand up. Never stoop down except for prayer. Stand up as a man or woman in this country. With that, let's close out with the last surah in the Holy Quran. Yes.
And before you pray that, and you are
Yes.
the answer, but my grandmother always told us that the prayers of those ancestors are still protecting you right now.
Yes. Absolutely. Don't ever forget that. And some people say, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. That's the joy you bring to the world with your conviction that you belong only to Allah, and Allah is always protecting you with your work and commitment, inshallah.
Yes, sir.
We'll end up with the last surah in all the Quran. It's called the Nas, or Mankind. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So I seek refuge with the Lord and cherisher of mankind, the King or ruler of mankind, the Allah or judge of mankind, from the evil whisperer, the same who whispers into the hearts of men and jinn, then withdraws at his whisper. Ameen.
Assalamu
alaikum.
One, that is a wrap. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
See you next week.
Next week.
Different
Brother
title
William.
next week. I'll have a different title next week.
Okay. Brother William Kareem will stop the recording for us. Thank you. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
So I can get this.